The Price of Freedom, Chapter 1, The Weight of Sacrifice, the Retribution, drifted through the void like a monument to human determination, its hull scarred by countless battles, its corridors echoing with the ghosts of the fallen. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, watching the distant glow of Kepler Station, the Dominion's last stronghold, a fortress that had withstood siege for 3 months and claimed the lives of thousands. The ship around her bore the weight of war. Bulkheads showed hastily welded repairs, memorial plaques lined the walls where crew quarters once stood, and the air recyclers struggled to mask the metallic scent of old blood and burnt circuitry. This was not the gleaming vessel that had launched humanity's first desperate counterattack years ago. This was a weapon forged in the crucible of loss, crewed by survivors who had seen too much and lost too many. In the ship's chapel, makeshift though it was, dozens of soldiers knelt in silent prayer. Some clutched photographs of families they would never see again, others stared at empty spaces where friends had once stood. The war had taken everything from them, homes reduced to radioactive craters, loved ones vaporized in orbital bombardments, entire worlds stripped bare by Dominion harvester fleets. Commander, Lieutenant Morrison approached, his young face prematurely aged by the horrors he'd witnessed. The fleet captains are requesting final confirmation of the assault plan. Chen nodded, her eyes never leaving the fortress that glowed like a malevolent star in the distance. Tell them we proceed at 0800 hours, and Morrison. Her voice carried the weight of every decision that had brought them here. Make sure everyone understands this is our last chance. We either break the Dominion here, or we die trying. The war had cost humanity everything, lives, homes, families, and dreams. But in the heart of every soldier, there was only one goal left, to end the Dominion's reign. And to do that, they would have to sacrifice even more. Chapter 2, The Heroes' Faces of the Fallen. In the enlisted quarters of Deck 7, Private Jonas Steele methodically cleaned his rifle, each motion precise and ritualistic. At 19, he should have been starting college, maybe falling in love, living the carefree life of youth. Instead, he was preparing for what would likely be his final battle, driven by memories that would never fade. The Dominion raiders had come to New Eden on a Tuesday. Jonas remembered because he'd been complaining about having to work at his family's farm instead of watching the championship game. He'd been in the fields when the ships descended, sleek predators that turned his world into a nightmare of fire and screaming metal. When the smoke cleared, his parents, his sister, his entire community gone, vaporized in the first wave of the bombardment. "You ready for this, kid?" asked Sergeant Rodriguez, a grizzled veteran whose left arm had been replaced with a prosthetic after the Battle of Titan. Jonas looked up from his weapon, eyes hard as diamonds. "Been ready since New Eden burned, Sarge. They took everything from me. Time I returned the favor." 3 decks up, Lieutenant Evelyn Shaw sat in her command station, reviewing tactical displays with the mechanical precision of someone who had seen too many battles. At 35, she was ancient by the standards of this war. Most soldiers didn't live to see their 25th birthday. Her record was exemplary: 17 successful missions, over 300 confirmed Dominion kills, and a list of commendations that ran longer than most obituaries. But the victories came with a price. In her personal quarters, a shrine of photographs showed the faces of the dead. Her first squad, all killed in the defense of Mars. Her second squad, lost in the Proxima Centauri raid. Her third squad, wiped out during the retreat from Vega Prime. She'd stopped counting the names after the first 50, but their faces haunted her dreams. Lieutenant, her aide, Corporal Williams, approached with a datapad. "The assault teams are requesting final orders." Shaw's fingers traced the edge of a photograph. Private Chen, barely 18, who'd died in her arms during the siege of Europa Station. "Tell them we go in hard and fast. No mercy, no quarter. The Dominion showed none to our people, and will show none to them." Down in the ship's engine room, Corporal Tarek Ruiz put the finishing touches on the improvised explosives that would, if everything went according to plan, crack open Kepler Station's primary shields. At 42, he was the oldest soldier on the ship, a former mining engineer who'd joined the resistance after watching his homeworld of series stripped bare by Dominion strip mining operations. He'd fought with improvised weapons and jury equipment, leading raids against Dominion supply convoys and military installations. His expertise in explosives and engineering had saved countless lives, but he'd also lost countless friends. The faces of his old resistance cell stared back at him from a worn, photographed wealth, men and women who'd stood against impossible odds. He was the only one left. "Poppy," whispered a voice from his comm device. His daughter, Maria, now 16 and living in the refugee camps on Luna, called him every night before a mission. "Promise me you'll come home." Ruiz closed his eyes, feeling the weight of a promise he might not be able to keep. "I promise, Mia. This is the last one. After this, we'll have a real home again." Every soldier on the battlefield had a reason to fight. Some fought for vengeance, others for justice, and some simply for the hope of a better future. But every one of them would pay a price, because the greatest cost of war is the blood of the fallen. Chapter 3. The final mission. Preparing for the ultimate battle, the briefing room of the Retribution had seen better days. Blast damage from a Dominion boarding action scarred the walls, and several of the holographic projectors flickered intermittently. But the room was packed with humanity's finest Marines, pilots, engineers, and medics who had survived years of brutal warfare to reach this moment. Commander Sarah Chen stood before the assembled soldiers, her uniform bearing the insignia of every major battle humanity had fought. Behind her, a three-dimensional projection of Kepler Station rotated slowly, its massive defensive arrays and weapon platforms clearly visible. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the room, "this is it. The Dominion's last stronghold. Intelligence indicates they have approximately 50,000 personnel aboard that station, including their remaining fleet command structure. If we can take it, we end this war." A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. 50,000 enemy personnel. The entire human assault force numbered barely 12,000. "I won't lie to you," Chen continued, her eyes meeting those of her soldiers. "The odds are against us. The station's defenses are formidable, and the Dominion has had months to prepare. Many of us won't be coming home." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "But we've been fighting impossible odds since this war began. We've lost worlds, fleets, entire armies. We've buried friends, lovers, family members. Every victory has cost us something precious." She gestured to the projection, which zoomed in on the station's docking bays. "But every loss has brought us closer to this moment. Every sacrifice has been a step toward ending the Dominion's reign of terror. Your brothers and sisters who died at Earth, at Mars, at Proxima Centauri, they died so we could be here, so we could have this chance." Lieutenant Shaw felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. How many more names would she add to her memorial wall? How many more young faces would haunt her dreams? Private Steele gripped his rifle tighter, feeling the familiar fire of rage burning in his chest. The Dominion had taken everything from him, but they'd also given him something: purpose, a reason to fight, to kill, to die if necessary. Corporal Ruiz thought of his daughter, of the promise he'd made. The improvised explosives in his kit could crack the station's shields, but someone would have to deliver them by hand. Someone would have to stay behind to ensure they detonated properly. "The mission is simple," Chen continued. "We breach the station's outer defenses, secure the docking bays, and fight our way to the command center. Teams Alpha through Delta will assault the primary docking bay. Teams Echo through Hotel will hit the secondary bays. Teams India through Lima will focus on the shield generators." She paused, her voice growing softer but no less determined. "I know what I'm asking of you. I know the price we're about to pay. But I also know that if we don't stop the Dominion here, if we don't end this war now, then every sacrifice we've made will have been for nothing." The room fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines and the distant sound of fighters launching from the hangar bays. These soldiers had seen cities burn, had watched friends die, had lost everything they'd ever cared about. But they were still here, still fighting, still believing in something greater than themselves. "They've taken our worlds," Chen said, her voice rising. "They've taken our families, they've taken our friends, but they haven't taken our spirit, they haven't taken our hope, and they sure as hell haven't taken our will to fight." She looked out at the sea of faces, young and old, scarred and unscarred, all united by loss and purpose. "We're going to hit them hard, and we're going to hit them fast. And when the smoke clears, when the shooting stops, the galaxy is going to be free. Not because we were lucky, not because we were stronger, but because we were willing to pay the price. They had been through so much, seen so much, but the war wasn't over, and neither was their duty." Sarah Chen knew what they were walking into. Victory would be theirs, but it would come at a cost measured in lives. Chapter 4. The Battle, Humanity's Last Stand-Down. Assault began at 0800 hours, ship time, with a coordinated strike that lit up the void between the human fleet and Kepler Station. The Retribution led the charge. her massive guns carving paths through the Dominion's outer defensive line, while smaller vessels darted between the enemy formations like angry wasps. Lieutenant Shaw's assault team was among the first to breach the station's hull, their boarding craft punching through the armored plating in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The moment the airlock cycled, they were met with a wall of plasma fire from entrenched Dominion defenders. "Move, move, move," Shaw shouted over the cacophony of weapons fire, her team spreading out to establish a beachhead in the station's main corridor. The Dominion had turned the docking bay into a killing field, with overlapping fields of fire and hardened defensive positions. Private Steele was second through the breach, his rifle barking in controlled bursts as he advanced. A Dominion soldier emerged from cover, plasma cannon charging, but Steele was faster. His shot took the alien center mass, dropping him in a spray of purple eye. "Contact front," someone shouted. "Heavy weapons team, northwest corner." Shaw's tactical display showed the nightmare they'd walked into. The Dominion had concentrated their best troops here, turning every corridor into a death trap. Her team was already taking casualties. Martinez down with a chest wound, Rodriguez cut in half by a plasma cannon, Williams screaming as medical nanites tried to reattach his severed arm. "We need to push through," Shaw ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If we get bogged down here, the entire operation fails." She looked at her remaining soldiers' kids, most of them, who'd seen their worlds burn and their families die. They looked to her for leadership, for hope, for a reason to keep fighting. She couldn't let them down. "Fix bayonets," she commanded. "We're going to take that corridor the old-fashioned way." The charge was magnificent and terrible. Humanity's soldiers advanced through a hurricane of plasma fire, their battle cries echoing off the metal walls. Shaw led from the front, her rifle blazing as she carved a path through the enemy lines. But the Dominion was ready. A plasma grenade landed at her feet, and she had just enough time to push Private Harrison to safety before the explosion tore through her torso. She fell, her blood mixing with the chemical fire suppressants on the deck. Lieutenant Harrison crawled to her side, his young face streaked with tears and combat grime. Shaw's vision was fading, but she could still see the corridor ahead, still see the Dominion positions that needed to be cleared. Take the squad," she whispered. "Finish the mission." She died with her rifle in her hands, her face turned toward the enemy. Her last breath a defiant curse. 3 levels down, Corporal Ruiz and his demolition team had reached the shield generators. The massive devices hummed with barely contained energy, their destruction the key to allowing the human fleet to bombard the station's command center. "Charges are set," reported Specialist Kim, her hands shaking as she armed the improvised explosives. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before the Dominion reinforcements arrive." Ruiz nodded, then looked at his team 5 soldiers who'd followed him through hell itself. "Kim, Martinez, get back to the extraction point. Make sure the charges are properly linked." "What about you, Corporal?" Kim asked, though she already knew the answer. Ruiz smiled sadly, thinking of his daughter's voice, of the promise he'd made. "Someone needs to stay and make sure they go off. Can't risk a malfunction, not with so much at stake." The team looked at him with the mixture of respect and grief that comes when soldiers know they're seeing a friend for the last time. One by one they clasped his hand, then disappeared into the corridors leading back to the human lines. Ruiz settled in behind the makeshift barricade he'd constructed, his rifle trained on the approaches to the generator room. He thought of Ceres, of the mining colony where he'd lived and worked and raised his daughter. He thought of the Dominion strip miners that had reduced his world to a barren rock. He thought of Maria, safe in the refugee camps, waiting for a father who would never come home. The Dominion security forces arrived and forced 24 soldiers in full combat armor, their weapons designed to kill humans efficiently. They advanced, methodically, professionally, expecting to find the usual terrorist cell or sabotage team. What they found was a 42-year-old mining engineer who'd learned to hate in the hardest school of all. Ruiz's rifle spoke again and again, each shot precise and deadly. He'd learned to fight with improvised weapons and jury-rigged equipment, but he'd also learned to make every shot count. The Dominion soldiers fell, but more kept coming. A plasma blast seared through his shoulder, spinning him around. Another caught him in the leg, dropping him to his knees, but he kept fighting, kept buying time for the charges to arm properly. "For Maria," he whispered, his finger finding the detonator. "For Ceres, for everyone they took from us." The explosion tore through the generator room, sending shockwaves through the entire station. The shields flickered and died, leaving Kepler Station naked before the guns of the human fleet. Private Steele had made it deeper into the station than anyone had expected. His squad was gone killed in the fighting in the outer corridors, but he'd kept moving, driven by a rage that had burned in him since the day New Eden died. He found himself in what looked like a command center, banks of alien computers and holographic displays showing the battle raging outside. A Dominion officer, higher-ranking, judging by the elaborate insignia, stood with his back to the door, frantically issuing orders. Steele raised his rifle, then hesitated. The officer was unarmed, clearly a non-combatant. Military protocol demanded he attempt to take prisoners when possible. Then he saw the display the officer was working at. Orbital bombardment coordinates for the human refugee camps on Luna. The camps where thousands of civilians, including children, had taken shelter. After losing their homes to the Dominion, Steele's hesitation vanished. His rifle barked once, and the officer crumpled to the deck. The bombardment coordinates disappeared from the display, replaced by system errors and warning messages. "That's for New Eden," Steele said quietly, "and for every world, you bastards." Burned, he turned to leave, to rejoin the battle, but plasma fire from the corridor caught him in the chest. He fell, his rifle clattering across the deck, his blood pooling beneath him. As consciousness faded, he thought of his family's farm, of the golden wheat fields that had stretched to the horizon. He thought of his sister's laugh, of his mother's cooking, of his father's proud smile when Jonas had graduated from high school. The Dominion had taken all of that from him, but in the end, he'd taken something from them to. Victory came at a price. Every inch of ground was paid for with blood, but it was worth it. Every life lost, every soldier fallen was a step toward humanity's future. And in that final moment, they knew they had given everything. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The cost of victory. The battle for Kepler Station lasted 14 hours. When the shooting finally stopped, the human flag flew from the station's command tower, but the victory felt hollow. The corridors were choked with smoke and the smell of burned flesh. Medical teams worked frantically to save the wounded, but for too many, help had come too late. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the station's main docking bay, now converted into a temporary morgue. Row upon row of bodies lay covered in human fleet, blanket soldiers who had given everything for this moment. The silence was deafening after hours of weapons, fire, and explosions. Final casualty report. Commander Lieutenant Morrison approached, his young face streaked with tears. He made no effort to hide. 4,372 killed in action, another 800 wounded, half of them critically. Chen nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Nearly half their force gone. The price of victory measured in the lives of humanity's finest. She walked among the bodies, reading the names on the tags. Private Jonas Steele, age 19, killed in the command center after disrupting a planned bombardment of civilian targets. Lieutenant Evelyn Shaw, age 35, killed leading an assault on the primary docking bay. Corporal Tarek Ruiz, age 42, killed destroying the shield generators that had protected the station. Each name was a story cut short, a life that would never be lived, a future that would never be. But each name was also a statement, a declaration that some things were worth dying for. "Commander," a voice called from behind her. She turned to see Captain Williams, his arm in a sling, leading a small group of Dominion prisoners. "The station commander wants to formally surrender. Says he has information about remaining Dominion forces." Chen looked at the alien officer, noting the defeat in his posture, the way he avoided meeting her eyes. A week ago, this being had been part of a machine that had enslaved half the galaxy. Now he was a prisoner, his empire crumbling around him. "To him too, debriefing," she said finally. "But I want security teams with him at all times. The Dominion's shown they can't be trusted." As the prisoners were led away, Chen found herself alone with the dead. The station's artificial gravity hummed around her, a reminder that they were still in enemy territory, still surrounded by the remnants of a hostile empire. But they had won. The Dominion's last stronghold had fallen. Their fleet was scattered, their leadership dead or captured. The war was over, even if the galaxy didn't know it yet. A memorial service was held in the station's main assembly hall, hastily cleared of debris and Dominion equipment. The entire surviving human force gathered, their faces showing a mixture of grief and exhaustion. Chen stood before them, her uniform bearing new bloodstains and blast damage. "Today we honor the fallen," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. 4,372 souls who gave everything, so that others might live in freedom. They came from every world, every background, every walk of life, but they died united in purpose, united in sacrifice. Behind her, a holographic display showed the faces of the dead young and old, experienced veterans and raw recruits, all united now in death. Private Steele's 19-year-old face stared out at them, his eyes holding the same determination that had driven him through his final battle. Lieutenant Shaw's weathered features showed the wisdom earned through years of command and loss. Corporal Ruiz smiled from the display, the same gentle expression he'd worn when talking to his daughter. They died so that children could grow up, Free Chen continued, so that families could live without fear, so that the galaxy could heal from the wounds the Dominion inflicted. Their sacrifice was not in vain, because we are here to honor it. The service continued for hours, with soldiers sharing memories of fallen comrades, reading letters from home, singing old songs from Earth. It was a celebration of life as much as a mourning for the dead, a reminder that the human spirit could not be broken by war or loss. As the ceremony ended, Chen made her way to the station's observation deck. Through the armored transperistal she could see the human fleet, battered, scarred, but victorious. Ships that had once been things of beauty were now weapons of war, their hulls telling the story of humanity's struggle for survival. The war was over, the galaxy was free, but the blood of the fallen stained the stars. Humanity's sacrifice would never be forgotten. It was a debt owed, and a price paid in full. The road ahead would be long, but the memory of those who gave everything would guide them. Chapter 6. Conclusion. The legacy of the fallen 1 year after the fall of Kepler Station. The Retribution orbited New Terra, humanity's first colony. World established in the post-war galaxy. The ship had been converted from a warship to a transport, her weapons removed and her cargo holds filled with medical supplies and construction equipment. The scars of war remained, but they were healing, Commander. Sarah Chen stood once again at the observation deck, but the view was different now. Instead of enemy fortifications and battle-damaged space, she saw the lights of a growing city on the planet below. Refugees from dozens of worlds had come here to start over, to build something new from the ashes of the old. The memorial wall is complete, Commander, Lieutenant Morrison reported, now wearing the insignia of a full lieutenant commander. We've included every name from every battle, going back to the first attack on Earth. Chen nodded, following him to the ship's new memorial hall. The wall stretched for nearly 100 meters, holographic displays showing the faces and names of every human who had died in the war. At the center, larger than the others, were the faces of those who had fallen at Kepler Station. Private Jonas Steele, who had avenged his family and saved thousands of civilians. Lieutenant Evelyn Shaw, who had led from the front and died with her rifle in her hands. Corporal Tarek Ruiz, who had kept his promise to his daughter in the only way he could. They're not really gone, are they? Morrison asked quietly. I mean, their sacrifice is still here, still part of what we're building. Chen smiled, thinking of all the worlds being rebuilt, all the children growing up free, all the families reunited after years of separation. No, they're not gone. In every school we build, every hospital we establish, every ship that carries supplies instead of weapons, they're in the laughter of children who will never know the fear of Dominion raids. She paused, her hand touching the wall where Ruiz's name was inscribed. There, in the promise we made to them that their sacrifice would mean something, that it would buy us a future worth having. Outside, the planet continued its rotation, its new cities glowing with the light of hope. In the schools, children learned about the war not as history but as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what could happen when freedom was taken for granted. In the hospitals, doctors treated both human and former Dominion soldiers, their oath to preserve life transcending the old hatreds. The galaxy was rebuilding, but it was rebuilding differently. The lessons of the war had been learned, written in blood and sacrifice. Never again would one species dominate another. Never again would freedom be surrendered without a fight. Chen made her way to the ship's communication center, where a priority message was waiting. The holographic display showed the face of Maria Ruiz, now 17 and attending the New Terra Technical Academy, studying engineering like her father. Commander Chen, the young woman said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. I wanted to thank you for making sure my father's name is on the memorial. And I wanted you to know I'm going to be an engineer, like him. I'm going to help build the galaxy he died for. Similar messages had been coming in from across human space. The children of the fallen, taking up the torch, carrying on the work their parents had begun. The war was over, but the struggle for a better galaxy continued. As the Retribution prepared to depart for its next mission, delivering supplies to a former Dominion world struggling with the transition to freedom. Chen took one last look at the memorial wall. The faces stared back at her, young and old, their eyes holding the same determination that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. The blood of the fallen would never be forgotten. Their sacrifice forged a new future galaxy where freedom, hope, and unity would flourish, and the lessons of the past would guide them as they stepped into a future of peace. The war was over. The healing had begun, and in the stars themselves, the legacy of the fallen burned bright, a beacon of hope for all who came after. In the years that followed, historians would debate the true cost of the war. Some would count the destroyed worlds, the shattered fleets, the trillions of credits spent on weapons and reconstruction, but those who lived through it knew the real cost: 4,372 names on the memorial wall, and the millions more who died in the struggle for freedom. They did not die in vain. Every school built, every hospital established, every child born free was a testament to their sacrifice. The galaxy they died for was not perfect, but it was theirs, a future purchased with blood and courage, defended by those who understood that some things are worth dying for. The last stand at Kepler Station was not just a battle. Promise kept, a debt paid, a future secured, and in the end, that was enough.